Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the European crossover webinar. And we are awaiting Italian trade data. Just trouble with the squawk yet right now. They still haven't received it. They're saying they're waiting. They don't have anything yet on the squawk. But we are expecting Italian trade balance. And then today we do get New Zealand dairy prices. Canadian housing starts at 8:15. U.S. import-export prices and retail sales at 8:30 Eastern. Wholesale trade, Canadian wholesale trade, that is, at 8:30 Eastern. And then at 9:15 Eastern time, we do get industrial production capacity utilization, manufacturing output, and NAHB housing market data, as well as business inventories at 10 a.m. Eastern. So quite a bit of data coming in. Italian data. It's always late. I don't know what's up with that, but it is. And like I said, I'm looking here at the squawk, and they haven't announced anything, and I'm not seeing anything on their board either. So it's just late. But we'll get some decent amount of data when we come into the States. As I mentioned, Canadian housing starts, import export 8:30 Eastern, along with retail sales and Canadian wholesale trade, and then 9:15 industrial production capacity utilization, as well as business inventories and NHB housing at 10 a.m. Eastern. So quite a bit of data as we roll into the States. Taking a look at the euro dollar, we're pushing higher. We did get a close higher, not hugely higher. We did close before we got, above. Here's our level 1870. We had our bias chart resistance at 1872. And we're trying to push up a little beyond that. But we'll get to where we stand there. Taking a look at the cable. Well, we're looking at the cable here. Here's the futures. So here's the 30-minute euro futures. And you can see we're making new highs already. And cable doing relatively well. Hasn't taken out those levels yet. We'll look at the cash. I think they're trading at almost the same price. 32.20, 30. Okay, so a bit of a 3-tick premium to the cash. 32.23, 32.20. But still looking pretty good here. Take a look at the Aussie dollar. And we did make it up to that 73.30. We just closed just a little bit below it. And here we are trying to broach that now. So still looking pretty solid on the Kiwi. For what it's worth, we did get the Canadian trade balance out just now. No, yeah, the actual that we got. So it did come out. And you can see here, Tesla's shot up. It's going to be with an inclusion into the S&P 500. So anticipation is portfolio managers would have to buy it. And so we saw a pretty big move here. Apple just kind of stagnated. It's been like that. Microsoft did jump up almost at 218. Amazon just gently higher. Google a little bit lower. And just clean that up a little bit. I had that with same day VWAP. but doesn't make any sense at this time of the morning. And it'll make it easier to see it without that. And I was just looking at the 30-minute chart right now. So let's go on and move back into where we're at. And we'll take a look where we stay with the NASDAQ. Obviously, we saw a pretty good pop late in the day yesterday. And this was pretty much playing possum at the end. We kept kind of dipping, but we kept holding here. And honestly, I almost grabbed a short and like, no, I'm not going to do it. I just kept, and the latter part of the session, I just kept kind of missing things just a little bit. Said, you know what, I'm not going to do it. And the thing that kept me from doing it was this VWAP, same day VWAP. I'm like, no, it's right here around the same day VWAP. It just can easily move off and start to move higher. And, because we kept bouncing up, we kind of fade, but we bounce right back up. And all of a sudden, kaboom, this thing just takes off. And then I guess with Tesla being included, we took off even more. Kind of since come back a little bit. Immediate resistance is going to be right here. 12,056. That's on the 5-minute. Take a look what we stand on the 30-minute. Another thing I kept an eye on it too was if you look, we'd held that trend line. We defended it. So they had the opportunity if they wanted to bounce. And certainly that's what they did. Get rid of this. The next key level above actually is just 12,112 when you're looking at it. If we can move higher, certainly it acts like it wants to. I mean, the S&P has outperformed better than the NASDAQ. Actually, since last week, because when the markets would be under pressure, S&P would still be holding up relatively well. But you can see here's the key level above right now. It's going to be 12,112. If they're going to make a move in the morning, that's what they're going to look for. There's a little bit right here just above that. You can see right here. See these two here? That would take you to, it's really just right there, 12,114. That's not much of a difference. Or the one right there, 12,119. If they would push it up a little bit. But you can see here the significance of 12,112. Certainly we're in a buy mode. So you can see that right here. You know how much I like to respect that here in the 30-minute EMAs. You can see we saw, well, we just jumped it to 12,056, and look at that little pop in volume. So they goosed some stops just now. We just made it. I was just pointing out 12,056. They tagged it up here at 58 or 59, and we just pulled back a little bit, but we saw that little pop in volume right now. So some people may have got themselves short, but you can see it's holding above right now. It's holding above same day VWAP. And I missed this. I wasn't even at the desk, but I noticed here. You see here, we went up here and it had this little doji, and then you can see right there, we're just below same day VWAP, but it was already kind of failing right here. So that was really a good opportunity to get short, although I wasn't even here at the desk. And so you can see here, as we got through same day VWAP, we're holding it. And I think maybe some people were probably thinking, oh, we're going to roll lower, and they got stopped right now in this run up here. And that's why I like to have this volume right there. It gives me an indication if something, usually you don't see something happen that fast, but if you break up here and you're seeing some heavy volume, depending on the situation, you can pretty much use that as a tool saying, okay, I think the move may have exhausted itself. Looks like they're getting out. So, with that, we'll just go on and bring in the news. So it says the dollar holds steady amid questions about the vaccine, U.S. political risk. The dollar steadied against most currencies on Tuesday as a return of coronavirus restrictions in some U.S. states and worries about a smooth transition for President Joe-elect Biden offset optimism about a coronavirus vaccine. Meanwhile, starting as Jahira about on media reports, Britain could reach a post-Brexit trade agreement with the European Union. I posted this in the chat room. I don't think very many people, well, they were around, but the only one who responded to it was Blake. I got that off of, it didn't even come through. I just saw it from that one called Financial Juice. And it said some reporter, was it the Sun? Or the Sun, the Star, something like that, had just tweeted about a deal that blah, blah, blah. And I copied that out and pasted it in the chat room, and nobody responded to it. The only one that responded to it was Blake. He said, "Oh, thanks," and the market just gently just started moving higher. And then about later on, I started to go even higher as equities ran higher. Some people were saying, "Oh, that's a BS story," whatever, or the Sun report. I don't even know who it was, but anyway. But nonetheless, it rallied. You know what I mean? So. Anyway, drug maker Moderna became the U.S. pharmaceutical company in a week to report positive results. Last week, encouraging progress in vaccine, blah, blah. Let's move on. The market reaction has been limited because it will take time to distribute the vaccine. Unless we clear that hurdle, the dollar won't rise. The greenback held steady at 104.50 yen. Australian dollar held on to overnight gains against the greenback, blah, blah. Well, here's my think on the dollar. I think we're in some trouble with this dollar. It just can't get a lift. And it just seems like any little lift, they quickly sell into it. And I think one of these days, whether it's this week or whatever, we're just going to wake up and all of a sudden that dollar's just going to fall through the bottom. I'm not saying it's going to completely just start tanking, but I think it'll breach lows or recent lows and then take it for another, let's say 85 ticks. And then we kind of languish there and we find out what happens. And I think that's going to happen. I did see the thing about Citi saying the dollar can. I don't care about that. I really don't. But I'm just looking at the structure of the market. And it just doesn't look good. It just looks like it doesn't look like it's going to fall apart any moment. But I think that we can come in and you'll see it just start to slide, and that'll be it. I don't think it'll completely just roll out of bed at that point, but that's it. Anyway, I guess I'll cover this story. I wasn't going to, but there wasn't anything else I didn't see in FX. But let me see. Japan doubles up as the yen's yielder and safe haven. Having burnished its traditional image of a global safe haven during the coronavirus pandemic, Japan's yen is attracting fresh interest as the highest yielder among the three major currencies. Past few weeks, the yen hit multi-month highs as news broke of Biden presidency and possible COVID-19 vaccine, which is odds with its tendency to weaken when investors seek risk and growth prospects. See here. Sorry about that. I had to sneeze on him, so I muted the mic. Analysts cite two big reasons driving a wave of money into yen markets as a net creditor nation in the world of fiscal profligacy, and the yen has retained some of its safe haven credentials. See if there's anything of any significance here. The real high yield, well, no, because we saw those big moves in the yen. So let's see here. BOJ policy become less extraordinary among central banks. Yield inflation on link bonds. Narrow yield differential should mean the Japanese private investors should have less incentive to expand unhedged foreign assets. As you can see here, less and less exposure. And JP Morgan portfolio allocations to overseas assets will slow further through the year end of 2021. With the Japanese outflows will depend on the extent of the U.S. recovery after the pandemic and whether the U.S. turns into a low inflation, low growth economy like Japan, says Masayuki Murata, general manager with Sumitomo. Well, that's interesting. Hang on. So let's go move into the analysis. See the NASDAQ, even after that dip, is kind of holding its own here. There we go. Been pretty much a steady march hard. Look at this. Look at that move. And then we just look at this. So if you look at this on the daily, we moved up higher, we moved here, and we've been consolidating. So if you look at it, you'd say 1593, call it 16 to, let's just call it 19. It's a little bit more than that. That's 300 picks. And then you just extend that. That takes you to 122 and change. And that's what I think is going to happen. And I'll get to the dollar index. It's just that the dollar index, it just doesn't look good. And it doesn't have nothing to do with that stupid city report. It's going to fall. I really don't care if it falls. I mean, screw it. But when I look at the dollar index, I'll quickly get to that real quick. I wasn't going to, but I might as well jump onto it right now. It just looks sick. Look at that. That's what I'm saying, is that every time it tries to, few key things going to take off and it won't take off. And each little bounce, they just quickly just sell right into it. I mean, it's like, oh, now it's going to take off. And then think about it this way. Remember, we were talking about this, where I kept thinking it was going to go lower over the last, now it's been probably about 8 weeks now since I kept saying how bad it was, blah, blah, blah. Oh, the equities are going to sell off. Now it's really going to see a bounce, and it never bounces. And you see this last night is what I was looking at this like, man, this thing looks sick. Look at that. Look at this. Then you get a good solid bounce, and then the market just sits there. Then we get one more like, oh, now we're taking off, and we just roll down the hill and give it all back, pretty much. So my thoughts are, like I said, I think we're going to break down to here. If we get past here, I don't think there's going to be any buyers, and we'll just dip down here, and then that's where I think we could drop. Like, I think it's going to be huge. I think we can drop down to like 91.20, 91 teens, and we just kind of sit there, and maybe we test a little bit lower as people think the bottom is going to fall off, and then we just sit there and we kind of flounder around there, and then maybe eventually we take a little bit further dip, and then everybody starts getting spooked. Maybe gold will take off then. I don't know. But anyway, I was just noticing that I'm like, this thing really looks sick. Let's go and move into the euro dollar. I think with the euro dollar, it won't have any choice. It'll probably end up getting pushed higher. Although things are bad in Europe, so you'd think, I don't see why. But with the cash dollar index, it's got the Aussie working higher, the Kiwi working higher. Just not good. But anyway, let's move on to analysis. So the euro on Monday furthered its most recent gains, although falling short of the daily close of 1872. Not a daily close because our bias chart, remember, see, we had 1872. Falling short of getting above that resistance. Resistance for Tuesday will be 1897 with support at 1816. Onto the cable. So cable rallied on Monday, falling short of bias chart resistance of 32.48. You can see that. Resistance on Monday will be 32.71 with support at 31.69. So I think the door's open for them to push a little bit higher. Maybe we goose some stops. Whether we can get above it is another story, but that'll be resistance for today. On to the Aussie dollar. See, the dollar's going to have a tough time. Dollar index holding up with these currencies moving higher. So even though the euro's moving higher and cable's definitely moving higher, but look, this just seems relentless. So that's gonna. They don't have the same weighting as the euro or the cable, but they do have some impact. Might be 8 or 10%, not sure. Um, so the Aussie carried forward its rally from Friday, challenging the key level of 73.30 on Monday. Resistance on Friday will be 73.54 with support at 72.72. On to the Kiwi. See what I mean? Doggone it. It didn't save it. It put in challenging the whatchamacall here. So what I was going to put in here, I remember put it in there. I put the resistance was 69.35 for today for the Kiwi. Remember that key weekly level is 68.96. We are above it. If they're going to push a little bit higher, which they did, not by much. Look, there's the high last week was 13, and today they got up to 17. I put it for 69.35 if they can push a little bit higher. They didn't. Get back here. And support is going to be there, 68.50, right there, top of that wick, 68.53. Onto the dollar CAD. The dollar CAD saw a good pullback on Monday, disappointing bulls. Support on Tuesday will be 30.37 with resistance at 31.23. Obviously still bearish. Let's go and move on to the dollar peso. thing's terrible. Almost as bad as the cash dollar index. Dollar peso saw a good slide on Monday, taking out key support area of 2023 before recovering to close at the 2023 level. We took it, closed right there. Support on Tuesday would be 2018 with resistance at 2032. Remember, 2023 is that huge. That that wasn't our bias chart support. It was 2028, but is that 2023? That was that huge level that we were looking at on the way down as a target. It's kind of worked a little bit as a pivot. So we closed just a hair below it, but basically right at the 2023. So we'll see what they can do today. Dollar yen. Dollar yen pullback closed below the pivot level of 452. The pair managed to hold the bias chart at 441. Bias chart support for Tuesday will be 431. Looks like we made it down to 425 with resistance at that's supposed to be 480 something. Doggone it. Hang on. So it's 431. And I believe it was 487. Hold on. I go with that wick. No, I went. What's it got? Yeah, right there. You see that wick right here? That closing wick, 47. Yep, was 47. Obviously, still bearish. Move on to the cash dollar index. And you can see this thing just looks absolutely abysmal. So the dollar index continued its feeble price action on Monday. The index appears to be barely hanging on. Immediate support is 92.15, but I'm afraid a stops test of 91.94 will not find buyers. Resistance will be 92.87. So immediate support is going to be 92.15. But if we get down to 91.94, I think we hit the stops. There won't be buyers. 92.87. And onto the QEN. Kind of an up and down affair. We did have 72.07 yesterday as our resistance. We made it up here to 72.28. We would actually go with the body close. That would be our resistance, which would be 72.16. And support we had for 71.14. And we didn't even make it all the way down. Remember, we talked about, I wonder why we were so low. We thought we might push lower. Then what we would have is support would be the open right here. You see that? And you have some wicks. So we'd go with the open, which would be 71.57. Onto the euro pound. Which is kind of meandering. So no changes here. 89.29 and downside. Well, actually 89. Yeah, 89.29. Although we're way above that. I'd say, yeah, because we bounced up and we sat here. We're thinking, okay, we may end up giving it back. So your resistance, you try and see if we can't right there. You see this body touch, you got this wick and this wick. That comes in at, well, that's how it came out with 89.29. Although it's holding right now, resistance will just go with the body, close right there, and that confluence is with this open here. That comes in at 89.93. Oh, we had 89.94. Yeah, basically same thing. So let's go and move into the Euro odd. Well, we turned around and gave all this back, because the odds are held up so well. So this tells you it's not the euro per se; it's the dollar that's weakening. Because look how strong the euro. I mean, if the euro was strengthening, it would be further period. And maybe because the odds strengthening, it wouldn't be like taken off, but it would be holding its own, and it's not. So once again, like I said, this is about the dollar just looking horrible. So support will just go with the level, which would be 61.53. Resistance. Go with this lower wick here. Things look pretty bearish right now. That'd be 62.42. Onto the Euro Kiwi. Well, you did hit this level here. That's going to be support. Whether it holds it or not, we'll find out. But it's going to be 71.50. And resistance is going to be, you see this wick here and this wick here, confluence in there. That would be 72.50. I don't know if you can say that's bullish anymore. Look pretty weak. Well, let's throw it back to bearish. I don't want to say range. Now go to the guppy. Actually, the Aussie yen. Hold up relatively well. Um, Solid close, but we're not seeing any real follow through. But that bar there was going to be resistance. Whether it gets there or not, right here, that closing bar, 76.74. And support would be right there. That open 75.96. Onto the guppy. Man, we're just meandering. We're not doing anything. So if we do take a dip here, that's going to be support 37.43. And resistance would just be this body right there, which is just above this wick, kind of to split the hairs. Not split the hairs, but split the difference here. And right there would be 38.55. And lastly, starting on. Took a dip here, quickly gave it back. Odd is really performing really well. Support, you can see this wick and this body come close. I'll go with 79.85. And on the upside, resistance is going to be this bar right there. That body close, 81.01. It's still going to be bullish until we can secure. If we secure a close below that low, then we can start to flip it back. But it's still relatively bullish, although it hasn't really gone anywhere. And that does it right there. We're just relatively quiet right now. Even NASDAQ is quiet at 12,046. Um, take a look at SPOOs. You see they're kind of holding their own here. That's NASDAQ. Talk on. Right here at 3611. Did you see that pop? You see, we've kind of actually stayed rather restrained. And you can see here, 2 day, it's just below 2 day and same day VWAP. There's a bit of a convergence there at 3613, 3614. Be interesting to see how the morning plays out. Other than that, that's about it. Thanks for joining us here on the European Crossover webinar. And bear with me. Yeah, I don't follow, he says IWM targets. I can see if it's just nothing that I follow. Hold on. Bear with me. Let me go on the Russell. Hold on. Well, here's the deal. This thing has really broken out. And I'm not looking at this one. I was actually looking at something this weekend regarding the Russell, and it's like ready to take off to the freaking moon. And let me do that. Let me go with that. Hold on. Look at this. It is really breaking out. It's doing the best of all the indices. Let's go to a weekly. Look at that. We were on the cusp as of Friday. Look at that. And look where we're at now. We broke higher, even higher. So yeah, I see what you mean by targets. You can't really see anything that could say a target on this. And we're even looking at a weekly now. Let's look at the daily to see if there's something that would. It's really outperforming everything. The only thing I look is from here to here with an extension, but it's even beyond that. And if you edit that for a 261% extension, extension would be 1879. So that would be a target. That's still a ways off though. Holy smokes. But who's going to fight this thing? Nobody's going to fight this thing. But I saw something this weekend and they're pointing out the Russell. And I was like, wow, that thing has really, you can see like so we're at some key resistance on Friday, and boy, we jumped up on Monday and really added on to it. But and then natural gas. This held. Remember, we went over this last week, and we said we'd have to close above this area, and that could really take off. And look what we did. We fell back. You want to go with the volume touches, so you'd be looking at. And you see that one bar that closed right there? See that right there? So I'm putting it right there. You see that has like almost like a hanging man, and we take off. We really fall apart at that point. That hanging man. So that's going to be key. So look for volume to come in at 262. And we're actually defending it right now. We're kind of holding here, but you can see here. So I like that 262 because if you look at that, that is significant. You see, that's a hanging man, and look what happened. We went all the way down. So that's going to be significant, a close below that. And that's 262. Right there, 262.2. And right now, the low today has been 266. But it's going to be defended back to 262. If you can get a rally back, you'd be looking at right there, 275. And I don't know if it'll make it up to 278, but immediate resistance is going to be right there, 275.7. Think of it as 276. With stops at 278, but I would say those stops would be on a 2-hour close, not just taking out the stops. We saw that yesterday with the S&P on Sunday night. It got above that, it got above the 36.13, but it couldn't hold it. And remember, we went down 10 handles. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, that's it. That'll do it. Thanks for joining us here in the European Crossover webinar, and have a good day, and we'll see you in the chat room.